manipulation. What you hope to learn is how advanced identity systems can defend against increasingly sophisticated deepfake technologies, reinforcing trust in digital identities and enhancing security within critical global infrastructures. This session will highlight innovative strategies essential for safeguarding identities in today's digital landscape. And with that, may I present Dino.
Thank you, Frank. Okay, so thank you very much. And I do know that I'm between you and lunch, so I'm going to try to make this as much as possible fluid and interesting. So, Jordan, you're going to, oh, over here, clicker. Perfect. So, just to introduce the background of the topic, you are probably very well aware of the issue of deepfake. So here I collected few examples of news that recently, in the last year and a half, have been appearing on the internet. The deepfakes will hurt 30% of our organization's trust in biometrics in 2 years. Cyber criminals are stealing iOS users' face scans to break into mobile banking accounts. Deepfakes and potential implication for online identity verification. And once again, new technology are helping to identify sophisticated AI deepfakes. So, as you probably heard if you participated in previous GBA events, but if you're not, I'm basically being very much involved in the design and implementation of a digital identity solution for the United Nations Pension Fund with my colleagues, who are actually represented here also by Elena for the United Nations International Computing Center. We developed this solution that indeed, beyond blockchain, also uses biometrics and specifically facial recognition. So, as I alluded to yesterday, as a former auditor, I've been obsessed with the need to provide, as we said, trust and assurance. So I started to soon become very concerned about the fact that deepfakes could indeed be a big threat for our solution. We're talking about 86,000 individuals in 193 countries that are using, not all 86,000 for now, but a good portion, are using our application. And of course, I wanted to be prepared because I'm expecting that pretty soon in one of the next sessions when I'm going to present to the board, the famous representative of 193 countries, is how are you addressing the issue of AI and the threats of deepfakes? So in order to do that, I, as a former auditor and as a former ISO auditor, I went and I contacted the ISO organization headquarters in Geneva, and I asked, as I did back in 2020, when I was looking for an ISO stand on blockchain, and they told me that they were about to release the vocabulary, at least at this time, they actually do have, it's not a certifiable standard, but it is a standard to conduct tests on what is defined PAD, presentation attack detection. So basically, this is probably the state of the art in terms of testing that can help an organization that is using a biometric system, in this case facial recognition, to test its ability to withstand potential deepfake attacks. So yesterday there was a question from, I believe, the lady from the state of California who just left the room about what is the definition. So again, there are at least some international level standards, such as the one issued by ISO or the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, that help us to have a common definition and common understanding. So I really highlighted key concept here, but fundamentally when we are talking, the term deepfakes is really a conversational term. Deepfakes is actually defined as a synthetic representation. It's a synthetically generated biometric characteristic. Of course, there is a much more elaborated definition in the document, but I just, again, as an auditor, as a very structured person, I wanted to start from the definition and then build on the definition with the methodology. So first and foremost, I look at the definition. So the problem is exactly this. My solution is predicated on the use of biometrics and on the uses of facial recognition. So after 2-3 years of implementation, we went live in 2021, we became aware that we had to do something about deepfakes. And that's when we added the artificial intelligence module embedded into the application itself in order to make sure that if and when some deepfakes attack occur, the application should be able to detect and prevent. So this is just to recall and just to provide you with a summary of what is the burden of proof that my application, our application, is required to meet. Proof of identity and authentication, proof of existence, proof of transaction, and proof of location. Hence, what you saw before, blockchain for the transaction, biometrics for the identity authentication, artificial intelligence to support that identification, and geolocalization for the proof of location. So there is, if you will, a relatively perfect mapping between the technologies used and the proof that we needed to provide. So again, just to reconfirm, in our case, the biometric profile rests always on the device of the end user. So we do not store and we do not transmit at any time biometric profile. Therefore, really my biggest concern is on the presentation, the moment where the biometric verification takes place, and hence PAD, presentation attack detection. So how can AI fight AI? That's basically the bottom line. The concept is, can we use artificial intelligence to protect ourselves against artificial intelligence? And here is what the ISO standard 30107-3/2023, the latest available in the market, tells us that we can use AI by developing machine learning algorithm and feature extraction to start identify various scenarios that can be used to train the AI module in recognize when something is real and when it's not. Now, in my case specifically, so there are different examples here of how AI can be used to detect AI: liveness detection, multimodal analysis, behavioral biometrics, continuous authentication. In my specific case, our design is focused on the first one. Because our biometric, our algorithm, it's a proof of life, it's a proof of existence. Indeed, when we ask our client, our retirees, to use the app and conduct the verification, we ask them to move the eyes, to move the lips, because so that we can determine that it's not a static picture. It's really a proof of liveliness that they need to conduct by fundamentally taking certain action at certain steps. Going, as I said, there is a training that can be performed in order to train the AI module to identify the behaviors that the deepfakes can have contrary to a real person. Detect anomaly, analyze images and videos, or use adaptive system. So all of these are scenarios that the ISO standard includes for an organization that wants to put under test their own solution. And there are, as far as I know, very few entities in the world. In fact, I am in the process of engaging one of these entities, and working with my UN procurement division, I had a challenge because in the UN, one of the primary principle in procurement is that you invite as many potential vendors as possible to give ample publicity to your procurement processes. So when I went to them and I said, I want to engage in a higher company that is accredited, because the company that can perform this test has itself to be accredited by another ISO standard to perform this test, there were probably only 4 or 5 in the world that, as of today, November 2024, can run this test. So very challenging, but hopefully promising. And I'm hope that in the next GBA event, I'll be able to share with you the result of this test. So how can we test this potential? So the ISO standard really give us a guide on how to go step by step. It gives us the principles and the methods. It gives us also the guideline for reporting on the results of the test, and give us also a classification to how to list the type of attacks. So there is a full annex to the standard itself that categorizes the groups, the different subset of attacks. It tells us also the applicability so that it's clear to where and when. Indeed, if you can see there, it says the standard focuses on attacks that occur at the biometric capturing device during presentation. So a very specific moment in a complete process of authentication identification, which it perfectly matches exactly my case, the moment where the presentation of the image is done. It does also define specific metrics against which the test can be contrasted and compared. So there are different acronyms: imposter attack presentation accept rate, relative imposter attack presentation rate, and so forth and so on. But at least by having these metrics, you have the ability to have parameters, to have, if you will, talking about different but similar domain, you have some sort of a KPIs, basically, to report on, rather than speak in general and say, oh, my application can withstand the PID. Well, you are doing actually with specific indicators that are defined by these 4 metrics. So that's the beauty of the standard itself. And then, of course, it also offers you the testing methodology. There are actually, if you read the bullet point number 2, there are 3 levels of testing. There is a level 1, level 2, and potentially level 3. Why it's potentially? Because level 3 is actually undefined, and it's up to the entity that conduct the test to generate fundamentally defined images. It basically is the so-called injection. So it's a test that does not fall under the category that the standards identify, but adds an other classification that it's open to the assessor and the entity being assessed, where you can say, I want to go beyond level 1, I want to go beyond level 2, where you have very defined and structured category, and I want you to come up with a random injection of an image that may look like an individual that can be using our application. So that's, I think, the beauty of the standard, that it's not strictly defined and limited by its categories, but also allows you to have this additional open category of attacks and injection. And also, finally, as I said, gives you a template, it gives you a structure on how to report on the result of the test itself. And also allows for the definition of exclusion. This is very typical of standard ISO standard, where you define in the scope what is included and also what is excluded. So you try to limit misinterpretation, you try to limit potential confusion. So now we are the GBA event, and we have been talking and we've been hearing a lot about BMM. the point is how can this reconcile with the concept of the blockchain maturity model? And here it is. Basically, this using an ISO standard, which from my point of view, it's something that is very useful and is very important because it's internationally recognized, and especially in my environment, we do work with international standard because it would be challenging and difficult to justify why using a national standard, a NIST standard or a BSI standard, British standard, or whatever that may be. So using international standard is important. But if you put in a process or in the context of an internal control system, the beauty of using an ISO standard, using a BMM and a BMM, it gives you the ability to have a comprehensive internal control system. Because with a standard, such as the one that I just described, you are addressing a specific problem. In my case, presentation attack detection for biometric-based system. But with a BMM, you are having a complete life cycle of requirement, of procedures that allows you to manage continuous improvement because it is a maturity model. And therefore, you define and determine where you are, but you can also define and determine where you want to be vis-a-vis the famous scale 1 to 5 of maturity levels. You assess the current state, the as is, and in line with what I just said, you also can define the to be state. You can set goals and you can also benchmark yourself with other entity. You can have an holistic view. You can track progress of your maturity journey. You can prioritize what is it you want to do vis-a-vis the number 3, vis-a-vis the goals that you have defined for the organization in terms of maturity. You can also align with the overall risk management. That again, goes beyond the specific, in my case, of the presentation attack detection. Encourage innovation, support the governance of the entire process, and ultimately complement with technical standard, such as the ISO that I just mentioned is one example. In my case, for example, I already certified the solution with the ISO 27001 standard, which is for information security management system. Now, hopefully, I will be able to add this additional ISO standard, but all these specific standards are checking the box of very discrete needs, discrete testing that fits under the BMM in terms of an overall and holistic, a comprehensive maturity management. So, this is my experience. This is where I am today. I hope that I'll be able to come back next year and share the result, hopefully positive, having passed those tests, and also provide some sort of a path to how to improve, how to increase the level of maturity of my solution. Thank you very much for your attention. Let me know if you have any questions. Yes. Heather. So, as I said, the way that the language that is being used is not called a certification per se, but the entities that are accredited to run this ISO test do issue a report of the result of that, which can be considered a certificate, but the ISO standardization did not call it certification. So, yeah. Please. Yeah? No?
Testing. Oh.
Yeah.
The first question was whether there was certification. The second, you mentioned assessor organizations who are accredited. Just could you elaborate that on a little bit? Who are the assessor organizations that you're familiar with, and assuming it's ISO accrediting them?
Yes, sure. I can give you, so my understanding is the challenge of finding an entity that can run this test is that they need to have laboratories and their laboratories must comply with another set of standards for them to be accredited. So I found one entity in the United States based in Colorado, I can give you the name, one entity in Australia, one entity in France, and the UN Procurement Division found one entity in Vietnam. I only found 4 entities that, as of today, are accredited, have a laboratory that they can run this test. I have the names, and I can share it with you. I was myself shocked. I thought that it would be, I don't know, 15, 20. When in the United States, one entity, I was really, really shocked. I was really surprised. Yeah. Yes.
Hi, thank you. Really interesting speak. Thank you. I have two, not just only question, but comments. Firstly, did you have any successful BMM model running right now in maturity level? Let's say level 1 or level 10, I don't know, but that's the first. But secondly, did you use the blockchain itself for make sure your whole process is your track and trace? Like whatever you use a blockchain to prove the blockchain maturity model. Do you have the plan for that or any idea?
Yeah, so very good question, thank you. We did a self-assessment with a BMM of our blockchain solution. And we basically were able to reach level 4. Now, I would like to share this result, but there are a lot of confidential information that prevents us as an organization to disclose. So that's, if you will, is the challenge in conducting the assessment and releasing the details. But yes, we did it more than once. It's the same process that, if you will, if you ever went through an ISO certification process, it's called a diagnostic review. That it's an iterative process that you run until you reach an adequate level of confidence that you are meeting the requirement of the standard. So that's what we did. We took the BMM and we ran a diagnostic review, and every time we identify a case of quote-unquote non-compliance, we worked on that gap, and then we implemented the mitigating controls, and we went over and over until we were able to reach level 4. We don't expect to reach level 5 because it requires certain level of automation for the optimization that, in terms of cost-benefit analysis, for us, the business case, it was not there yet, but the answer is yes. BMM blockchain certificate. I'm not sure I understand the question.